For some time now, flying TinyWhoop meant you have to sacrifice some aspect of your flying, whether it be flight time or in most cases, image quality and resolution. Well, that's about to change with the Meteor 75 Pro HD, a 1S TinyWhoop with a 1080p camera and a flight time lasting over 5 minutes. So let's check this out and see if those claims are true. Okay, so here it is, the Meteor 75 Pro HD, an updated version of the Meteor 75 series. Now, BetaFPV has made some simple yet highly effective changes to this new drone here, including a new frame, a lighter canopy, and a redesigned battery capable of more capacity. So let's open this up and see what's inside. All right, so here we are. All right, so the first thing I see here are some spare props and a driver or a screwdriver, a Phillips screwdriver, and some bolts here, some spare bolts, which is pretty cool. Next, we have our battery charger here, which serves both as a tester and a BT 2.0 charger. We have 2 ports in here, so you can charge 2 batteries at a time. Besides that, you have a USB-A plug that goes to your VTX, so you can download the footage off your DVR or to update the firmware on your VTX. So pretty cool cable, very important cable, so do not lose this, very, very important. Next, we have our batteries, and which is pretty cool, which is kind of the highlight here. This is one of the redesigns of this new drone, is this new battery here. This is a larger battery here compared to the 450 milliamp hour. This is a 550 milliamp hour, and this should provide a lot more flight time, especially with this drone here. So I'm pretty excited to actually take a look and use these batteries. All right, next we have a USB-A to USB-C plug here, and this is gonna be used to update the firmware on our flight controller. Finally, we have the drone, and this thing looks pretty cool, guys. Wow, it's surprisingly light, and that's what they were trying to achieve here with this whole setup. We'll take a look at that in a few moments here. Besides, you have a QR code here. You can scan this to go to their social media site or go for support, download manuals, and such. Okay, so let's take a closer look at the Meteor 75 Pro HD. And the first thing that I noticed are these large propellers. These things look so huge compared to any other TinyWhoop. Here's the Mobula 6 for comparison. You can see how large these things are. Now, these are using 45mm gem fan propellers, which are a little bit larger compared to your regular Meteor 75. Now, having this larger propeller setup on here will create more thrust and also increase the efficiency of this drone overall, which is what you want in a drone. And that's one of the highlight features of this whole drone is the flight time as well as the increased performance. Now, driving these propellers are these motors. These are the 1102 motors. These are 22,000 kVs, and we'll see how that is gonna affect our battery life. But for the most part, that should give you more top end speed in the higher end of the throttle. Next, we have the canopy on here, and it looks pretty cool, like, almost like a helmet. And this was redesigned specifically for this drone. Now, this canopy here is lighter and stronger than the original canopy. Now, which is really good because this drone here feels super light even for its size. Now, BetaFPV says this drone weighs around 35.7 grams, and I do believe it. But let's weigh this one to see how accurate that is. So 37 on the dot. This thing is super light. It goes between 36 and 37, which makes sense. Now, inside the canopy is where the magic really begins. Now, we have the Walksnail HD system in this drone. Yes, digital in this small drone. Now, this drone comes in 2 options, whether it be the Walksnail system or the HD0 system, and they're both pretty good systems. I've tested those before in the past, and they've yielded really good results. Now, my version here is equipped with the Walksnail system. We have a 1080p camera on here that records at 60 frames per second. And you also have an onboard DVR as well that can record your footage here in HD. So you have the option to record in your goggles as well as in your drone. And that's one standout feature compared to the HD0 option. Now, talking about the Walksnail system, this one here does have a 350 milliwatt VTX, which is more than adequate for a drone of this size. Now, behind here, you have the antenna for said VTX. This is pretty cool. And if you want to upgrade this in the future, you can easily remove this and put a better antenna on here. This has a UFL connector on here. Now, on the side here, I can see an antenna here, and this is your antenna for your receiver. This has an Express LRS receiver connected to it, which is really, really awesome, and this should yield really good range. So the combination of this VTX and this receiver should make this thing perform very, very well. Now, in the earlier version of the Meteor 75, there was an Express LRS receiver on here, but it was SPI based. This has now been changed to a UART based or serial based receiver as well, which is really good. And then you can update this separately from the actual board, because back in the days you had to update the actual Betaflight software or firmware just to update your Express LRS receiver. Now, the heart of any drone is the flight controller and ESC, and we have this flight controller on here. This is an F411 flight controller with 5 amp ESCs. This thing is pretty cool. As I said before, it does have a serial-based Express LRS receiver on here. You do have these plugs here to plug your motors, so if you do want to change your motors or you blow one out, you can easily just unplug it and plug a new one in here. Besides that, you do have a BT 2.0 connector on here to power up this whole system, and a micro USB port here to update the firmware on the flight controller. Pretty much standard, but really good. This BT 2.0 does give you really good performance. I'm glad that they're still using this. Obviously, this is BetaFPV's version for their connector. So anyways, this thing here is pretty good, guys. Let's take this thing for a flight. I'm gonna try to fly this thing here indoors and outdoors. I have not plugged this into the computer yet, so we're gonna put a battery to this, try to bind this to my radio, as well as bind this to my goggles and see how the image looks. So let's do that. Okay, so first thing that we're gonna do here is bind this drone to our radio. Now this has Express LRS on here. Now you can flash the Express LRS receiver in here to have your binding phrase so it matches your radio. In my case, I'm gonna do it the old fashioned way. I'm gonna just attach the battery to this plug here 3 times. That's gonna put the receiver into binding mode, put my radio into binding mode, and the two should be connected in theory. Now I have 2 radios right here. I have my daily driver, the Jumper TinyWhoop right here. This is the V2 version. I've done a full review on that, and this is a pretty cool compact radio to complement this drone, as well as the Light Radio 3 right here. Now this is a BetaFPV radio, comes built in FrSky as well as Express LRS. So today, since this is a BetaFPV drone, I'm gonna try it with this radio first and see how it goes, and then maybe move on eventually to the Jumper T Lite. Now we have these 2 batteries on here. This is the 550 milliamp hour battery. This is the new version that came with this Meteor 75 Pro HD, as well as the original battery. This is the 450 milliamp hour. And you can see there's a small difference here, both in width and in length. And obviously this one here is the higher performing battery, more capacity, and also a higher C rating. So this should perform very well, and this should reduce any kind of battery sag while you're flying. So I'm simply just gonna attach this 3 times to the battery connector. And that should put it into bind mode. I go back here, hit the bind button. Let's see. This thing is quiet. This thing is quiet. Now let's try to bind our VTX to our VRX or to our goggles. Now that we have our VRX powered up, let's plug this in. And we're gonna put both of these into bind mode. It's in the bind mode. Put this one into bind mode. We have image now, woohoo! All right, so we're looking good here, and I'm gonna power it back on. Hopefully it cools off, cools down. Anyways, let's take this off and see if we can fly around here. All right, I'm gonna try to update the firmware on the VTX, make sure my switches are good, and then take it for another flight in here, and then go outside. So yeah, let's go for a flight and see how this thing looks. Okay, so we're back from our test flight, and the Meteor 75 Pro HD did an amazing job. And this thing is so impressive, guys. It's pretty much the best of both worlds. A drone that can fly really well indoors and does a pretty good job outdoors as well if the winds are light. Now, flying this indoors, it was a blast to fly, especially with this adjustable camera right here. I can fly this thing low and fly really slow and smooth and just shoot some gaps throughout the house. Now, with this setup on here, I could fly anywhere throughout the house, and never once did I lose any reception from the VTX as well as my RX signal. But as you can see, today was very windy, and if you have those same conditions, it's gonna be a hard time trying to get this drone to fly straight. And that's one of the downsides of flying a light drone just like this. Overall, this thing did a pretty good job, and never once did I have any issues. The flight control didn't freak out when I flew it, whether it was outdoors in the wind, doing a dive. Never once did it have any shimmy or shake. So the tune on this drone is amazing. And for me personally, guys, even indoors, the rates on this was pretty adequate. So overall, the flight characteristics on this drone is pretty good. Okay, so now moving on to the visuals of the Meteor 75 Pro HD. And this is the highlight feature of this drone, possibly the reason why you're looking at this drone in the first place. Now, this did a pretty amazing job. This 1S VTX and camera combo did a really good job throughout my flight. Whether it be indoors or outdoors, I had pretty clear image throughout my flight. Now, there is the occasional mushiness on the side, which is typical of any Walksnail or DJI system. This is obviously a two-way communication VTX system, and this is just the focus mode coming into view here. Now, what that does is it kind of protects your center line of sight while you're flying and kind of gives you some mushy corners just to preserve the image overall. Now, this has a 350 milliwatt VTX on board, and guys, I must say it did a really good job, especially with this small little IPEX antenna on here. I'm really impressed with the signal. Now, I did fly this with my VRX as well, and I do have some premium Omnis on here, so I may have gotten some better performance than usual. But guys, the visuals on this is spectacular, guys, especially coming from a 1S drone. Now, one thing I did notice throughout my flight was when I got to around 3.6 to 3.5 volts, I would get some of that focus mode in view, and sometimes when I returned the drone closer to me, it would not go away. I know that's a way to preserve the image or preserve battery by sending less data or lowering the bit rate, but sometimes I would see that, and even if it came back closer to me, that focus mode would not go away. Now, I do have the option to turn that off completely. I do have it in the auto mode, so when I go further away and my bitrate does drop, it does go automatically into the focus mode. So maybe I might want to experiment with that in the future and just lock it out so it never goes to the focus mode, but that did happen. Now, we do have 8 GB of onboard memory in this VTX, and that allows you to record the VTX image straight to the memory on here. Now, I did take a look at that video, and it looks really good, really clear, just like any other Walksnail VTX on the market. So that's pretty cool, especially a drone of this size. Now, this feature alone opens up the possibilities for this drone even more. Now, as you probably already know, I've modded my TinyWhoop 4K a few times. This thing is highly modified, including a new plug on here, an ability to record the gyroscopic information on here, and also I have an Express LRS receiver on this drone. Now, this is a 2S drone, and I've turned this thing into a cinematic beast. And the reason I bring this up is because all this potential, or all those features are stock in this one drone right here. We have a BT 2.0, so an updated connector. We also have gyroscopic information being logged on this flight controller, as well as the DVR recording this 1080p image on here. So this thing is straight out of the box. It's a 1S drone, and it does have a lot of features. So you could probably use this for more things than just TinyWhoop flying in the house or even outdoors, guys. Now, one thing I need to note here before we move on is that if you're gonna fly this drone here really low, a lot of guys like to fly these 1S batteries down to around 2.5 to 2.8 volts to kind of stretch the flight time. You are gonna lose the image on your VTX. This thing will lose image around 3.1 volts. So if you're gonna fly this thing for a long period of time, or if you're gonna fly this thing really far and you see the battery warning on there, make sure you get back and land before 3.1 to 3.2 volts. If not, you still might have the ability to fly the drone, but you're gonna lose image with the Walksnail system. So that's one thing you need to know. Now, I personally did not experience this. I didn't fly it that low. I usually try not to damage my batteries, although you can fly them really low. But at that point, a lot of guys do that. So that's one thing to note if you are flying this. I don't want you to lose your drone while you're flying it. And if you do fly this thing around 3.1, you are gonna lose the image on your VTX. Now talking about battery and voltage, I did fly this drone with 2 batteries. One, the 450 milliamp hour battery that's standard with any other drone in the BetaFPV line, as well as the 550, which is released new here with this drone here. So this 550 here is amazing, guys. This thing has a greater capacity and a higher C rating, guys. So with that said, I didn't experience any kind of battery sag with this drone while flying it with these new batteries on here. It's pretty good. I did get some increased flight times. Performance was great, guys, even down to around 3.5 volts. Now, BetaFPV does claim that you're gonna get around 5 or can get over 5 minutes of flight time with this drone. In my experience when flying indoors, that is possible if you're flying very smooth and calmly. And if you do, land around 3.4 to 3.3 volts, you can get around, yes, 5+ minutes of flight time. And I have experienced that numerous times. Now, if you're gonna fly this drone in a normal manner, you're gonna get a little bit less than that. I average between 3.5 to 4 minutes of flight time if I'm flying it indoors. And if I'm gonna fly it outdoors or fly it really aggressively indoors, I get around between 2 and 2.5 minutes. That's not bad, guys. That's really, really good, especially if you find these things really aggressively. Now, if you're gonna get the 5 minutes on here, it might be a stretch, especially if you're gonna do some traditional normal flying, meaning you're just gonna buzz around, do a dive, then recover. It's gonna be hard to get around 5 minutes, but that is possible if you're gonna do some nice, smooth, scenic flying, maybe shoot some gaps in your house and then not modulate the throttle too often. You could easily get 5 minutes of flight time, and that claim is true, guys. Last but not least, let's talk about the radio or RX reception on this drone. Now, this Meteor 75 Pro HD has the Express LRS receiver on here. You can see the antenna right here. Now, this one here is a serial-based or Europe-based receiver on here compared to the older model with the SBI base, and that does work. Now, this does ship with the Express LRS 2.0 on there, and for me personally, that wasn't an issue, but if you do have to upgrade that, you can do that easily in the configurator on the computer. Now, the performance in this was really good. I did fly this drone with 2 radios. I did fly it with the Jumper T Lite V2, as well as the BetaFPV Lite Radio 3. Now, I had good performance with both of these radios. I did fly it at 100 milliwatts with the Jumper T Lite V2, and it did a pretty decent job, guys. Flying this outdoors was a breeze, no issues. But there were some times when I flew this on the far extreme end of my house when I was outside. I did experience some micro fail-safes with the Jumper T Lite. Now, that's only at 100 milliwatts, and that is kind of acceptable. This is a big concrete house, and I'm on the opposite end of the house while I'm outdoors. So that can happen. Now, with the Lite Radio 3, I did have a lot better experience. Now, this can come in the FR Sky or the Express LRS version. This is the FR Sky version, but I do have an Express LRS module on the back here. And I did fly this above 100 milliwatts, and with this radio here, I had a really good experience both indoors and outdoors. Never wanted to have a fail-safe. Granted, this thing can go up to 500 milliwatts. I think I flew like around 150 milliwatts, so it wasn't an issue in here. I never wanted to have any fail-safe when flying with this combination right here. So this is a pretty cool combo here. If you have this radio already, you can just probably get the module or just get the one already with the Express LRS built into it. Now that I think about it, this is gonna be a pretty cool combo if BetaFPV wants to make this into an RTF kit. You have a radio right here, you have your drone, and then probably add some goggles on here. Maybe if they can make an, I don't know, a Walksnail goggles, that's possible. Or take an existing box style goggles and just slap this to the front, and then now you have a really inexpensive goggles for an RTF kit. That's something they can consider, and I'm sure it will be in line with other RTF kits on the market, guys. So overall, what do I think about the Meteor 75 Pro HD? I do think that it's a pretty impressive drone. When I saw the specs on this, I was like, it's too good to be true. But overall, I like this drone very, very much. There's not much to hate about it. You're talking about a drone that can fly over 5 minutes. You have Express LRS. You have a 1080p camera on here and the ability to record it and stabilize it in the future if you want to. This thing does build your confidence, whether flying indoors or outdoors, especially in light winds. This thing will perform very, very well, guys. Honestly, I do think other manufacturers will just have to follow suit because there are not too many drones in the market this light with this performance, with HD on here, with this flight time. Now, if you're looking for a larger drone, maybe a drone to carry an action cam, I have one right here. This is the Pavo 25, another drone here by BetaFPV, and this one here produces some really smooth cinematic images, guys. I've done a full review on this one, and I'll leave it linked right here. So thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.